therapy webinar. I hope to see many of you join the first one. These format of these is going to be the same as previously, really tight 15 minutes. Going to start covering one very specific subject, with the idea being that we have about 15 minutes at the end for any questions. So please feel free to add them in the Q&A, and Andre will be monitoring and can bring them up. Adam's going to be joining me today. I thought it might be nice to have some different voices, so welcome, Adam. I think most of you probably know Adam's the smartest one in the family, so he's here to showcase some of the work that he does around leakage. So this session is around hotel bookings made outside of the TMC program. Andre, can you set the first poll up? Here we go. So I've tried to avoid using the word leakage. I just don't know about you. It's it's a off-putting word. Just a quick one. Do you call it something different? And feel free to put it in the chat if you've got anything else. But it's just connotations of leakage I don't particularly like, but I guess it's getting some kind of industry norming. Naughty travelers, yeah. Like it. Out of channel, yeah, kind of that's a bit more descriptive for people who aren't in the travel industry. That's cool. We'll could maybe flip back to that one at the end. And then Andre, the next question is maybe getting into the nitty-gritty a bit more, is how much hotel leakage do you have? And I've put it in percentages there, and including I don't know. So yeah, I'll put it in 10% brackets there, but if you don't know, put don't know, or just take a guess. I'd be interested just to see where people are at with some of these. How many naughty travelers do you have? Well, I look at enough expenses to realize there's probably a lot more naughty travelers than there are out of booking channel compliance. So all that's coming in. So the question I've got today, it seems that most people pretty low numbers or don't know, which I kind of expected. I'm going to talk today a little bit around just clarifying what leakage is and also why it's a little bit difficult, why those don't knows are so high, I think. Wanted to, hopefully you can see my screen okay. Wanted to just, and maybe give a couple of quick wins that you might want to consider. And then Adam will show you something real quickly that we do for when we're looking at it. Last week was the ITM Trends Summit, and these were the top 5 priorities that travel managers put down in the ITM, which is the UK version of GBTA. And I just thought it was interesting when I picked this up, is that the 5 most important priorities for travel buyers were ensuring content access, making sure their OBT is optimized, duty of care risk, demonstrating the value of the program, and budget control. I'm just reflecting that getting your full visibility of your hotel program affects all of these. I mean, if you haven't got the right content, people will be going outside and increasing the risk of leakage. If your OBT is not optimized, then people will be going to other spots, to their personal sites to make their bookings. Clearly, there's a duty of care risk. If you don't know how much you're spending on hotels, you're undermining the value of the program, and clearly budgetary controls. If you've got big holes in your reporting of your numbers, then exercising control is going to be more challenging, or you risk pushing more bookings offline, out of channel. The more you try and reduce your cost base. Well, and a little bit of research from our side in terms of looking at the real cost of hotel leakage. In the work that we've done recently, we have seen about a 3 to 6% increase in the rates per night per city that travelers spend when they book a hotel outside of the program versus inside the program. So as much as you might think travelers were trying to do the right thing and save money, actually they end up spending more, particularly if you consider the total cost of the stay. Some of you, particularly if some of you guys in the US, you might have some kind of commission rebate type programs, or the commission is offsetting your travel agency fees. Clearly, if you're not getting the bookings through the agency, you haven't got those commissions. And just as a matter of interest, we do partner with a third-party commission collection company. So if you are thinking of doing a commission rebate deal, let us know, because we're doing a really good job of getting commission back from the bookings that are made outside of the agency. Because sometimes people make commissionable bookings when they don't realise. Third thing, VAT recovery. VAT doesn't get talked about in the UK sales tax. I was doing some work with a client recently, and we worked out that for every expense processed where the recipient of the invoice was the individual rather than the company, and therefore had to go back for reprocessing, it cost $34. So you think about what your cost of your travel program is. It might cost you, $5 or $6 to make the booking in the first place. Every time a booking is made outside of the program, it might be costing you another $30 just in making sure you're getting the VAT back or going back and querying the expenses. We talked about negotiation risk in terms of not seeing what your total volumes are and the security impact, which is not to be underestimated. Just want to quickly highlight different types of leakage. And I think we've got to acknowledge that some is acceptable or good, particularly conferences, those kind of things. Big challenge we have is around timing. So, and I'll talk about this in a minute, but clearly there's the bad leakage, people who are chasing content, chasing their points, prefer a particular vendor over another. Wanted to highlight something around the key driver, I think, for what reduces leakage is how you're asking your travelers to pay. So I was doing some work with a client recently who, for various reasons, had to turn off their lodge card. So they were paying for all travel by a central card, and this was in Norway. And for a couple of reasons, they had to turn it off, and people had to go and spend on their corporate card, their own personal card, sorry. And they'd gone from a program with virtually no leakage. Everyone was just bill backing their hotels the whole time through to them paying themselves. We've gone up to about 40% of hotels start getting booked outside of the program because the travelers suddenly that leash is or the benefit of booking and the leash is taken off in terms of policy a little bit, and they start doing their own thing. So I think payment is a real big factor, and I think the primary driver of how much leakage you have in a program. Just want to quickly touch on timing issues. The challenge with calculating leakage is just that people don't submit their expenses on time, that the amount in the agency never matches what the amount in the expenses actually is for good and bad reasons. And even if people do their expenses on time, there's always that lag between when the booking data comes through and when the expense data comes through. So when you're looking at your program cost in total around hotels, you've got to think there's the easy match stuff, the vendors match and everything. You've got the vendors the same, but that doesn't quite match on the amount. So you've got to think about how do you include those. And then you've also got to think around the payment. So people aren't expensing some of it. So we find that virtually no one has the same payment method around the world. So you might be asking some countries to expense and some countries to pay on invoice and some pay on P cards and some pay on central cards. And I think those variations mean that it's really hard just to quickly get a number on what your hotel total spend really is. You've got to do this a fairly detailed exercise. But last thing for me, I think there is a quick and dirty. It doesn't really work at a granular level, but for those of you who said you don't know, a real quick thing you could do today is pick a city, ideally a city where people fly internationally to rather than domestically to. Look at the number of inbound air nights into that city. You're going to have complications around people who've done one-way trips and have got stopovers or time differences, or they're taking a car or train somewhere. So taking an international city, look at the nights there and compare that to the hotel nights. It will give you a very broad indicative leakage of that city at that point in time. So ideally international to try and get rid of those car and rail pieces. And at least that might be able to give you a flavour of what the total leakage is. And then, you can think about how you might explore that. So I've rattled on and I want to give Adam a couple of minutes. So Adam, do you want to take over and I'll stop sharing?
Yep, sure. Excellent. Can you see this? Wonderful. Yep. So I wanted to give an overview of our product and how it relates to leakage, what we're talking about. So this is our line manager dashboard, which aims to give line managers the best view of their total travel of everyone in their team. So I want to explain three things to how this might help inform what we're talking about today. The first is about the total picture. So this dashboard takes into account not only several different types of information, as in spend by transaction types or averages and so on, but it also incorporates different sources. So this is the agency data, this is just the expense data, and this is a combined view. So this number here, for example, is the reconciled amount of agency and expense where we deduplicate any transactions which exist in both. We don't double count. The second thing we can do is identify where the leakage is happening and who's responsible for it. So if I go to this tab here, we can see leakage within the context of our total reconciled spend. So we can use these columns to understand, this, for example, location regions, the ethereal plane has $20.8 million reconciled, of which 1.7 is leakage. And what we can do within this dashboard is use our helpful leakage tab here to figure out, not only broken down to hotel leakage, for example, where and how this leakage is coming from. So if we say the ethereal plane has a disproportionate number or amount of leakage, is 32% of the whole, we can click on that and then look at, for example, hotels, so suppliers in the ethereal realm where hotel leakage is happening. So this can help us thirdly inform our action points. So it may be the case that the ones with the Shy Retreat, Columbia Cloud Resort, the ones that make up 3%, maybe they do exist within our preferred program, for example, and we just have to take into account that when we negotiate rates, for example, or it may be that they don't, and we have to change our approach and go to them and then ask for a negotiated rate, for example. It may also be the case that individuals this high leakage within this high leakage grouping are disproportionately responsible for it. And in this case, it's almost certainly the case. Hannibal Torrance has 3% just in himself of this total location region's hotel leakage. So this is an example where the approach is going to have to be a little bit different based on what we do find. So first of all, we have the total data, we have agency, we have expense, we have leakage, and we have the combined view. Second of all, we can identify where this leakage comes from and who's responsible. And thirdly, we can create action points based on what we discover, whether it's a specific hotel, which is something we want to address, or whether it's an individual traveler, or whether it's a different breakdown of our company, or so forth. But this is how we can use our products to hit all of those 3 points.
Excellent. Thank you, Adam. So that's our 50 minutes up. Got time for questions if anyone's got them. Just going back to that poll quickly while you're thinking about it. 40% of people didn't know what their leakage was, and a good chunk of people were in the 30 to 40% bracket, which I think is like an industry norm, but I think it's actually high. So I think I used to use the rule of thumb that 40% of hotels will there was 40% leakage in a program. When we've done more of a deep dive, it's usually less than that. So once you take out that kind of good leakage or understandable because of timing and things, actually that does bring the number down because people do submit expenses inconsistently, and so you kind of not comparing apples and apples. So any other questions? Here is your chance.
Hi, Dan. Sunit from Canon. How are you?
Hey, Sunit. Hey, nice to meet you. Yeah, hi. I'm really good, thanks.
Yeah. So I've got a question. I think one of the points that really stood out for me is the benefit of not having hotel leakage, which is the battery claim. So
Yep.
we currently, with our travel management company that we are with, we now have, with majority of the entities throughout EMEA, that the company pays for the invoices. So it's very important for the hotel stays. So it's very
Yep.
important for us to then get the invoices in order to do the VAT reclaim. But
Yep.
we are finding it really challenging to get the invoices because the hotels would say, sorry, Joe Blogs, you did not pay for the stay. You are not entitled to get an invoice, which our current approach is to ask our employees to bring back the invoices so that we can have that for the VAT reclaim purposes. Do you have maybe any insight or tips of what processes could work in order to improve the invoice collection, or does this fall outside of the scope of what you are basically providing as a business?
Yeah, so I've come across a similar issues. Um, I think normally I would assume that your agency, if they are paying for it on a central invoice, they should be getting the invoice through. So in in essence, the agency should be collecting those invoices in order to charge them onto you. So I kind of push the problem onto them a little bit. On the flip side, we do work with clients, and this is a bit of it's always a pain for the travellers, is who require, even if it's centrally paid, that they still have to put the expense claim in for that hotel. That does add cost and that adds time, but it does mean that you're kind of incentivizing the traveller to have to do it in order to get their other expenses signed off. I'm not a big fan of that before automated solutions then trying to make the travelers' lives even more difficult. But from other clients that we work with, where I actually do the reconciliation of what's being charged to make sure that the agency is charging the right amount, we actually do that reconciliation, but we do rely on the agencies getting the central invoices from the hotel for their travelers that they've paid for. Because I don't
Okay.
know if that's um, and then separately we can have another conversation because it might be I've got another way of doing it if they're not helping, and that's with one of our partner companies who I can put you in contact with. It might be that they can help as well.
Mm.
Because they actually go and
Yeah,
chase.
so
They've got a team in Kenya who go and chase everybody up. In fact.
yeah, it's a very complex approach actually, because the agency themselves do not take responsibility. They are the middleman between us and the booked hotel. So there is a possibility to have an integration, but that's going to cost extra per invoice that is being collected on behalf of the company. So we are obviously still trying to keep costs down and trying
Yeah,
to like figure out this is a new change where we are paying on behalf of the travelers. So
yeah,
it's yeah, I'm still trying to find our feet with that. But yeah, thank you so much for your insight on that. I definitely think
yeah.
that I can
And
have
I
some
think
internal discussions based on it.
And one thing I would say to that is, I've been doing some work looking at the cost of invoices that don't get approved, the cost of losing that VAT. So as you're doing your business case, happy to share those with you another time. But if you're trying to put a business case, it might cost us an extra tiny bit on the invoice, and that's painful because it's extra cost. Actually, the savings elsewhere might kind of justify it. And just just a few rules of thumb I've developed around that from working with a few, going real deep dive into some of that. And I spent a couple of days, a couple of hours last week on the phone to the German VAT or the tax office trying to understand some of the ins and outs of this. So I appreciate that the burden is high in terms of getting those
Mm.
invoices addressed right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for your insights, Dan. Really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
drop me a note, and if you want, I can put
Yeah.
you in contact with some people. Yeah.
Super. Thanks.
There's a question in the chat here around guys. If you need to drop as well, we will put a recording out like we did last time, so you'll get an email from Andre or from maybe from the marketing email with the link in, so you can if you need to drop, then you can pick it up. Any cities, markets consistently appearing or different customers as having high leakage? I think so. The biggest driver of whether if leakage by market or by is payment. So as I said before, that's a bigger driver than any particular property type or country. Some countries, as we all know, the people chase points more than others. So in the US, there's a much more of a driver towards loyalty points, and therefore travelers will um, make every effort to maximize their points. And that might mean if a chain's not in a program, they'll find it anyway and book it. The other thing we do see sometimes in the oil industry, people doing those recurring bookings, they're always going to go off. You know, they're going to go offshore at a certain time. They'll book back with the same hotels. You do see certain trends with that. So I think there are trends maybe and maybe something we might be able to look at, Adam, is by age, but it'd be interesting to see if there's certain demographics whether we want to get that information. But yeah, I think of all those trends, biggest one for me is payment. And some countries just don't really go for virtual cards or and so it's obviously not always in your control. Excellent. That might be everything. I'll just hold on another second. You did mention hotel chains in there. I know you'll know from doing hotel RFPs, some hotels have got better data, so they'll know that your travelers are from your company, even if they didn't book it through the channel. I always find it embarrassing if you're doing a hotel RFP and your numbers are nowhere near what they think they are. So we know the data's better in some, but I wouldn't say it's necessarily their fault. Although some obviously market more heavily towards the travelers direct. Okay. Well, thanks everyone for your time. So the recording will be out, and we'll send some follow-ups. And any other questions, just drop me or Adam an email or on LinkedIn or something. I'm happy to follow up. Otherwise, the next event is planned for a Monday again on the 23rd, I think, of March. It's a month today. Is the next one where we're looking at the total cost of travel, and that means maybe a bit like Sinet was saying just there, what everything associated with travel and how does the kind of traditional bits that we normally manage, how much a percentage of that of the total it really is. Okay, thanks everybody. Thanks for your time. Thanks Adam for helping out. You can do it next
Sounds
time.
awesome.
Okay, see you later.